Hey, it's Sean. This is Becoming an Illustrator Day 4. So I've started this brand project. I've created the illustrations, I've revised and noodled them, and I got them to a place where it's good enough. But all that work will be for nothing if I can't present it in a compelling way. So today I'm going to turn that into a case study so that I can share it with other people and they can see the work in context. I'll show some cool tips maybe for those of you who have never done this kind of thing but want to. If you're an illustrator and your work is just the images flat on the screen displayed, I'll show you some ways to make it more interesting, compelling, and just help people imagine how they're going to use the work that you do. So let's go.
So here I am putting together the file, and I realized pretty quickly I wanted to refer to an actual crosswalk sign. So I'm looking at stock images there. I mean, really well done images on Unsplash. And I test out something on the character I made just to see if he should wear a hat. He should not. But I decided maybe I could create a fake kind of promo situation where this logo mark is put on to an actual crosswalk sign, and I'm like, well, let's see if I can do it. Now, I'm not really experienced or really good at Photoshop, so I hope you don't feel intimidated by this idea. If it's something you're like, oh, I could never do that, I think you could do it. I simply drew with a pen tool a mask around that square right on top of the image. And then I did my best to recreate this kind of grate that went on top of that, but went over that screen. And so it's a simple grid at a 45-degree angle here. And I just colored it with a gradient. And I tried not to overdo it. It didn't need to look perfect, just wanted it to look pretty close. And at the scale, the nice thing about working up close, like as close as you can, is you do your best and you're like, it's not that convincing, but as you zoom out it becomes more convincing, and that's what I realized here. So this felt good enough for my eye, and it's really not a super important image. It's just kind of a nice to have thing. So I put that in and it ended up being as part of this case study, which is pretty cool. Pretty happy with that. Images here, I'm just doing a 1920 by 1080, so it'll be full screen, full width here for all these images, all the same for now. And I'm throwing in the pieces that I've already prepared, such as the little J guy, and there's a badge that I made, and giving some variety with the colors. And some of the basic things you would put in a case study like this are the color palette, the typography that you use, and just these different elements like the logo and that word mark. If you don't know, the word mark is when you basically write the name out, and you can use a font, you can customize a font, you can do custom lettering. I ended up customizing a font that comes with the Apple computer. So here I'm putting together the color palette, and I'm like, should I double down on this kind of like traffic light motif and use those to show the color? Ultimately, I realized it was a bit too much, and just didn't need to be that overdone. So I ended up going with a really simple just block of colors to show off the brand colors. And then I put together additional colors that you might need for the web, or if you were to create an app or anything like that. So it's just good to build out that color palette and think through some things. Frankly, I didn't think through in the way that somebody else might. You'd think through things like error states, maybe if you have an app, or success states and things like that. So generally you do have some kind of red and some kind of green in there. Then I put together the typography palette, which I kind of already done that work too, but I'm just kind of displaying it here in the case study to show how it works. The way I do the case study is it's really similar to a brand guideline document. It's not explaining how things are working or getting into the detail, but this is this is a lot of stuff similar to what I would put into a brand guidelines document. Now, this is a channel about the illustration, right? Not the design, but this is where I'm coming from, is the field of brand design. So I can't help myself but to use that language and come from there, at least for now. But again, these are some tips that you might want to borrow to kind of make yourself, I don't know, upgrade your own skill set. I was going to say make yourself look bigger and better, and yeah, you're kind of doing that, I suppose. I also inserted in some taglines that I made and just kind of made that look like it could be a billboard or whatever. And checking some messages from my buddy Neville. And then going through Photoshop files to make the mock-ups if I haven't already made them. So sometimes it's simply placing one of these marks into the file and maybe it's tweaking some colors. It can be really simple, but this can be really powerful. Let's say you have a great illustration that you want to put into real life. This is how you do it. I ended up having to keep that De Niro image. It's just perfect. I just love it. And then you can also, with these mock-ups, is you can just see what does your illustration look like in the real world. Is it finished? You know, sometimes I realize it's not finished. I have this way of working that's, for better or worse, it's just like I'm not seeking perfection, but I'm always, creating for my own taste. And so I'm not going to put together anything I don't like. But I can work quickly sometimes or leave room for improvisation. And so that is something I end up doing here. I wanted to do a sweatsuit initially, but I couldn't find a free mock-up for that. So I decided I'll wait. So anyways, I got to this guy with the bucket hat and sweater combo, and this was an opportunity for me to improvise. So I get out the iPad, and I had an idea for what I would do, and I created a new image to put on the bucket hat. I also felt like, the more custom illustrations the brand has, the better off they are, and the more tools they have, and they can look consistent. So I started with a rough kind of dimension for how large that NYC is on the bucket hat, and worked from there to create an image. And I'm working pretty quickly here. Again, doesn't need to be perfect, but could I create something to look even better on that hat? So I ended up going with a scene. I'm just thinking about the idea of a jaunt and a stroll through a park. So that's it. That's what I ended up doing. And then I started playing with it. How can I get this to work in one color? This is something that's kind of important to think about when you're creating images, is how is it going to get printed or made? A lot of people don't think this part through, and they have too many colors, and it looks great, but it can be really expensive to create or impossible to create depending on what you're doing. So when it comes to actually producing the designs, I've found that if you can work in just one color or two colors, you're much better off a lot of the times, and your work is done ahead of time. So in this case, this is an image where it's going to be just a single color. So I'm testing it on a dark background, also a light background, to see what we can do there. And I was pretty happy with it, being kind of a white image on a darker background. Tweaking it there, like what should his outfit look like? And so I laid it on the brown background with the orange drawing, so it's still a light image, and it becomes a little bit abstract, but I thought it looked pretty cool. I mean, this project has kind of evolved from the beginning. There was one point where I was like comparing to brands like On Running, and I think that finished one was Korha or something like that, and some others. And I thought it was going to be kind of like in their lane. I guess it's sort of an activewear brand, but I'm kind of seeing it as like it could be just New York fashion brand, winter clothing, stuff like that. So put together these billboards with the illustration I made. I had to do something with that. I really liked it, and I was like, what will this work for? I think it'll work for the website. I think it would work, even on a mobile size, but I put it on these larger billboards. Okay, so to wrap this video up, I thought I'd show the published case study so you know what I'm talking about. So I'm on a website called Behance, is where creative people can show their work, and I've put everything in here, and there's a bonus video here. I created a little animation, really simple animation based on the crosswalk signs, and then I put all the images that we saw earlier into this format. So it's all here. You can check it out on Behance. I'll put the link in the description. If you like it or comment it on there, I suppose that would help me on Behance. I don't really keep up on there, but I thought I'd just show this to give you an idea of, what it looks like to put together the case study and present the work. So this is something that I could go and share with people I want to work with. Maybe it's like a peer, or maybe it's an opportunity for a gig, or maybe some company sees this, maybe Robert De Niro comes upon this thing and he says, we've actually got to make this thing real, and he reaches out, and that's how we do it. So I'm presenting this thing so that it's more compelling, more convincing, looks and feels real. So thanks for watching. That's it for today. I'll see you next time.